It is well with my soul, with my soul. It is well with my soul. Oh, it is well. It is well with my soul. Moya wam gushege moya wam. So I want to share a personal journey, and that's why I'm sitting before you today. Initially, when I wrote this, I thought I'll be standing. So I'm sitting before you today. And my journey might not be the very interesting journey, obviously. It's a journey that I don't wish to anyone sitting here today, but it's also a journey that provides a lesson, a way through, giving hope, and any other good thing that you may think about. And you know why that? Because I'm alive. So one hope that I believe will come through this sharing is that it will shed a light on the causes and impacts of psychological trauma for forced migrants in this country and globally, and possibly inspire some positive changes in how we approach brain health and the well-being for these individuals from a forced migration background. And let me start with asking us a question, and this is a question to you and I. Have you ever tried to make sense of fragment of your past, piece by piece, like sitting back and looking, and until you try to see a picture emerging from those pieces of your past bad traumatic experience? That's exactly what I'm going to be sharing with you today. And I've been doing it until I saw a picture emerging. I have a journey. There are currently 44 million forcibly displaced people in sub-Saharan Africa alone, and I'm one of them. In 1996, I was 14 years old. The war started in my country, which is called the Democratic Republic of Congo, in the east, where I'm born. And we were forced out of the city and went to the village, searching for where there is safety. 1.5 years later, my mom and dad and my siblings decided there is a bit of peace back in our city in Bukavu. So we had to go back to the city again, because now there is a hope for a peace. Few months within the city, things became worse again. And I think many seated here know more of this story through media and through many other forms of information sources. So from the rural area, we traveled in the city. Now I've grown a bit. I'm 16 years old then. And we're hoping that now we're going to restart a new life. And as a child, all I could see is like, what will happen tomorrow? And so 2018, another war came, which we all know. And now this time we had to travel differently, different destination from my mom and my dad. Then after that time, because now we've been on the move between rural and urban, there are steps that I have to skip, and we can't share every step of the journey. So we just focused on one thing in our move between town and urban and rural area. How do we survive? And we had only one hope, reuniting one day. The loneliness and despair that I experienced in my 16-year-old mind was beyond what I can put in words today sitting before you. There is no word that I can use to explain them. In 2001, we returned in normal life. You remember during COVID, they were telling us, soon we'll go back to normal. When a clay pot is broken in my culture, I don't know how many have seen a clay pot, but from a rural area, we know there is a clay pot. And in my culture, they use the roots of a banana to mend it. The only difference between a mend broken pot and a non-broken pot is you will never turn it as you used to turn it before. You need to be very careful because it's a broken clay pot. And so in 2001, we hoped we're going to rebuild our lives back. Now I'm 19 years old. Almost 4 years later, in 2004, the same armed rebel group came back again, who forced us to flee from the city. They now this time stormed at our university and forced us to become soldiers. We had to carry arms for them into the forest, and whoever refused to carry their guns was shot and killed in the spot. My friend were killed in my front. On our way to the bush, a few of us were able to escape, and we crossed into Rwanda. That's our neighborhood. From Rwanda, we traveled to South Africa, through Tanzania, Malawi, Mozambique, by land. Plenty of us would be using lorries, a lift in a train, walking from a border to a border, which I still recall. If you ask me how is the border of Malawi to Mozambique is designed, I know. And when we were crossing to Mozambique, our friends who couldn't afford drowned in a river called Zambezi, and they couldn't make it to the destination in Maputo. We were with an unclear mind all along our journey. We had nightmare every night. And our nightmare was very much about those who died in our front. I don't know the whereabouts of my family at that time. Remember, I was in school. And I was just 23 years old. There is no contact with them. And I don't have contact where I'm going neither. Almost half of my life in that time was spent flying from war and violence. When I arrived in South Africa, my dream was to complete my medical school, which I dropped at 5 years. I was rejected by the 3 first universities I approached in South Africa. And the question was, who will pay for your fees because you're a forced migrant? The second question I was told, ask your government to send a letter to prove that you will go back to work in your country so that we can admit you in our medical school. I tried to explain that the country is at war. There is no way that there's no government in a way. And that was not an easy way for me. My fear was that I may never be able to continue my study. And this fear intensified day after day. Trying to frame my lived experiences into a story that I can share is not an easy way, I must say. The details of my journey are rather fragmented. I'm sharing with you the event which happened so long ago, but they still have impact on my life, day after day. As part of psychoeducation, part of healing process, I recognize the power and knowledge of the development in neuroscience. Since 1990, we should have had during that period to help me understand what I'm so powerfully describing right now as unclear mind. And to help me understand that I was not going crazy, but that experience of armed conflict, violence, and persecution can have a significant impact on the brain and can cause considerable psychological stresses. I did not know all this during that time, obviously, And this caused me to live with great worry about being in an unstable and fragile mental state. Providing this information to someone who's on a forced migration status like me is very important for refugees and asylum seekers to understand that they are not feeling what they are feeling because of a mistake they committed. I want them to understand that they are not going crazy neither. This information is provided that they may understand that their brain has been impacted in many ways by the trauma they experienced. Some of the bodily responses I described may feel familiar to some of you seated here who have experienced any type of trauma in their young age, like myself, especially those with similar experiences like refugeeship. Once in their lifetime, they might have experienced a trauma that they can't explain, and they don't have control over that. I want to tell you today, you don't have control over what the body does when you're in psychological trauma process. After these experiences, the world is experienced differently, and the brain too. Surviving such situation diverted me in trying to control unbearable physiological responses. This was the rhythm of my life from adolescence into my adulthood. I spent this time, many years of constant hypervigilance, tracking for danger, anxiety, stresses associated with living in limbo. My body was always primed to defend itself. My exposure to this traumatic experience affected my learning and cognitive functioning. This manifested as the inability to concentrate in schools when I had finally been accepted to study at KwaZulu-Natal, difficulty in processing information, impaired short-term memory recall, and the inability to store long-term memories. We all know that the process to store, retrieve, and respond to new learning, the brain must be in a calm and attentive state. Whereas when in the state of fear that I was in, the brainstem was involved in the fight, flight, freeze mode. And information was blocked from entering the brain's area of higher cognitive memory, consolidation, and storage. Another thing was sleep, elusive sleep because of being on a constant alert. Then when I was on the run, I just slept in every small burst whenever I could, and even when I was safe, it was not an easy way to change. It became a pattern. We all know that sleep is critical for brain health and function, and that it plays an important role in memory consolidation, emotional regulation, and overall cognitive performance. So when your sleep is disturbed and my sleep is disturbed, this can impact the ability of our brain to manage stress, which leads to heightened anxiety and emotional reactivity. Something which always puzzles me is the way in which certain sounds, smells, and visual stimuli can still have an impact on my life today. Certain triggers can make me fear, and some others make me think back to a traumatic event which I experienced. For example, whenever I see a soldier in a uniform or a gun, I have an immediate fear response. My heart starts pounding. I start sweating. My sound that are like a bomb, the previous speaker mentioned it, will start immediately jumping from my heart. It pounds so strongly that I will immediately start wanting to leave, run, freeze. This immediately results in my heart racing and blood pressure to increase sometimes. And even I wish to die for cover. Finally, and perhaps the most shockingly, any smell of rotten food will trigger memory of the abandoned dead bodies and corpses, which we saw almost every day when we were on the run. At times, we were almost forced by the soldiers to throw those bodies into a mass grave. Maybe you'll ask me a question. How did I manage this? How am I alive today? And how did I cope? I found a quick solution to my life. I started playing guitar and watching standing comedy. It helped me a lot to break thoughts of what had happened to me and thoughts of taking my own life, because many of my friends took their own lives. And they would come to me and say, Your mother has this position in country. My mom was definitely an accountant who was making his little money. And my dad was in business. And they will say, your life is miserable, just die. And they took their lives. I couldn't do that. This helped me to ensure that I don't drown my sorrow with alcohol neither. Later, I realized that the combination of this playing this guitar and singing and watching the comedy slowly reduced my anxiety and my depression. I recognized the power in expressive art. In my case, the music had been my healing. I recognized that I didn't know anyone to direct me in this, but I took control over my situation. Expressive art can provide a pathway for externalizing symbolized trauma before it can be accessed verbally by promoting healing. I don't want to go any further. I want to say that in the face of undeniable adversity, I stand before you today not only as a survivor, but as a testament of the resilience of the human spirit. My journey, like that of many people who have experienced trauma, has been marked by pain and trauma, but it's also a story of healing. It's a story of hope and this transformative power of compassion. Each one of us has a capacity to make a difference in the lives of those who have endured hardship beyond imagination. Let us commit to being advocates for change, transforming and fostering empathy, and to providing the support and understanding that every individual, regardless of their past, they deserve better. Together we can create a world where the healing is possible, where trauma is met with compassion, and where everyone, no matter how silenced they have been, they can rise again. Thank you for being a part of this journey of mine, especially the Atlantic Fellowship, toward a more compassionate and inclusive future.